Beth. All right, I'm going to take it to you, Jake. That's two people, Lisa Murkowski, Susan Collins. People were looking toward Joni Ernst, but she's indicated that she's going to stay on board with Pete Hegseth. Is there anybody else that could be a no vote? After all, Roger Wicker, the chair of the Armed Services Committee, was signaling that he did want the vice president to stand by to be a tie-breaking vote.
So the only other person, Katie, I would look to is Mitch McConnell. McConnell voted yes today on advancing the nomination, which, listen, it's a good signal. It's not a complete you're out of the woods situation, meaning you're going to get McConnell's vote. I don't know that you're going to get his vote. He hasn't said one way or another. Listen, the people who are in charge of Hegseth's nomination believe very strongly that he will be confirmed to be Secretary of Defense. Hard stop. Now, does that mean that J.D. Vance won't have to come up here to break a tie vote on a 8:30 on a Friday night? No, it does not. I mean, I assume that he's going to have to break a tie vote. You know, it does highlight that a 53 seat majority is not, you know, it's not everything. It's not the biggest majority in the world. It's a governing majority, but it's not a massive majority from which you could do anything you want. It just does highlight the tenuous nature of it. And I think as we get further down the road, Katie, as we get to Tulsi Gabbard, and most specifically Tulsi Gabbard, this 53-seat majority is going to be very difficult for her. Now, the Senate Intelligence Committee did notice Gabbard's hearing for next week, for next Thursday, I believe it is, a week from today. I'm not sure where that stands, and to be honest with you, neither are is the Trump White House.
What about RFK? What about Kash Patel, Jake?
Yeah, I think Kash Patel and RFK are probably fine. I mean, a little bit too early to know. They haven't gone through their hearings. They haven't been put through the full ringer. They have done, meetings, but they have not been put through the full ringer. I think it's a wait and see on those two.
All right. So, Lisa, in terms of the Hegseth allegations that Julie Sirkin spearheaded that reporting on yesterday, we found a little bit more out from this affidavit. Initially, we saw a redacted affidavit. We've seen the whole thing now, right?
We have seen the whole thing, barring a few redactions for people's names, as I understand it, Katie.
And what's in it?
The whole affidavit, the part that Julie and others from NBC News reported on yesterday, is a single paragraph that reflected Danielle Hegseth's allegations that Samantha had told her that on one occasion Pete had grabbed her groin without consent during their marriage, that she recalled that conversation happening, Katie, between 2014 and 2016, and that she believed what Samantha had told her because she had witnessed Pete behaving toward his second wife, Samantha, in a way that was consistent with those allegations, that he was erratic, that he was aggressive. And then, of course, she goes on to detail her personal observations of Pete Hegseth and conversations with Samantha Hegseth and the remainder of this affidavit, which I'll also flag for you. NBC News was first to report.
I just want to include Pete Hegseth has denied this through a lawyer. Samantha Hegseth, the second wife, has said that there was no physical abuse during their marriage. She said that to NBC News. There's also a 2021 order in their divorce proceeding in which both parties agreed that neither parent claims to be a victim of domestic abuse. Jake, one more to you on this subject, and that is, why do you think Lisa Murkowski and Susan Collins feel comfortable coming out and saying no, and Joni Ernst does not? Potentially. I mean, I don't want to put thoughts in her head, but she was more skeptical toward him before, and now she's not as skeptical.
I could just tell you, I don't want to put them on a psychiatrist's couch here and explain their psyche, but I will put some facts out there. Number one, when Ernst said when she signaled she might be against the nomination, or she had some questions about it, she got hammered back home politically. I mean, there were people on talk radio, there were people on TV. The local party was very tough on her. That's Joni Ernst. Remember, Lisa Murkowski has survived primaries before. She won a write-in campaign with the last name Murkowski in Alaska. That is not easy. I mean, it is funny, Katie, but I mean, her political strength historically in the state of Alaska is second to none. That's Murkowski. Now on Collins, number one, there's a lot of speculation she won't run again. We'll have to see. She has been very, very adept at running campaigns in her state against Democrats as well as Republicans. She won a very contested race in 2020, spent a lot of money, had a lot of money spent against her by Sarah Gideon, who was the State House Speaker. These are people who are extraordinarily comfortable in their political skin. And to be honest with you, they have all the power they need. Susan Collins is the chair of the Appropriations Committee. Outside of the leadership, the single most powerful Republican senator in the United States Senate. So I think that just gives a little bit of context without putting them in therapy for a minute.
All right, Peter Baker, let's talk about Donald Trump's agenda and the ways in which Congress is going to try to move to get it done. He's signed, as you know, that raft of executive orders, a lot of them on immigration, but also desires for lower taxes. These sorts of things are going to cost a lot of money. You're going to need a lot of money to fund what he wants to do at the border, how he wants to deport millions of undocumented immigrants. You're also going to need pay-fors to get these tax breaks. How is the Republican Party working with him right now?
Well, you're right. He's putting so many things on the table, many of which are sort of hard to reconcile with each other. Remember, at the same time, he's talking about lots more spending and more tax cuts. He's also empowered Elon Musk to, in theory, cut $2 trillion out of the annual budget, which, of course, nobody in Washington thinks is possible. Just today, again, he said he wanted NATO countries to raise their military spending to 5% of GDP. Well, we spend about 3.5% of our GDP on the military. If we were to go to the target he has just set for NATO, that would be another $567 billion right there. So I think you're seeing, of course, at some point in the coming weeks where reality begins to bite and they begin to have to make tough choices. Which promises are they going to actually try to keep, and how will they try to keep them in ways that are satisfying to Trump? And which ones can they push off to later in his term or just kind of fuzz away?
Julie, what about these payoffs to get the tax breaks? What social welfare programs could be on the table, on the chopping block?
Well, certainly Elon Musk and others have suggested Social Security, Medicare. These are really the programs that would make the biggest spending cuts happen. But of course, top Republicans are extremely concerned about that, Katie, for a good reason. You'll remember when Senator Rick Scott even floated a plan to sunset Social Security and Medicare programs, the stir that caused, that moment between Marjorie Taylor Greene and President Biden on the floor. So this is a really delicate dance. Ultimately, though, they're not going to be able to make the kind of cuts they want to make unless they make those big cuts that will affect so many millions of Americans. This is such a live ball, as Jake Sherman and others, of course, have reported. But certainly this is something that Republicans are considering. If Donald Trump puts pressure on them to make it happen, especially as they consider these budget bills over the next couple of weeks, and they have to start figuring out what they can cut to get the tax cuts across the finish line, to get the border policies that Trump wants, the energy policies that he wants. I mean, those are spenders, and they're going to have to find places to cut. Obviously, those things are unpopular with the American people. So back home in their districts, members of Congress are going to be hearing from them. Here in Washington, they're going to get the pressure from the other side of Pennsylvania Avenue at the White House, trying to get them to do what Trump wants them to do here, Katie.
Jake, you got name checked.
Julie's right. I mean, this just highlights to me how unrealistic the expectation is that Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, has put out, that indicates he'll have this done by the before the Easter/Passover break here on Capitol Hill. I just don't see that happening. I mean, these are incredibly difficult choices about cutting incredibly popular programs. And remember, you go back to 2010, 2012, when Republicans get into the we're chopping things game, it never works out well for them. Paul Ryan was very big on that. He was on the vice presidential. He was the vice presidential nominee in 2012. Barack Obama beat him and Mitt Romney. It's just very difficult. And remember, and that doesn't even get into the tax side. So you're talking about two different sides of the ledger, the cuts and the taxes. So that doesn't get into the state and local tax deduction, whether you're going to cut tax on tips, whether you're going to cut tax on Social Security for Americans living abroad, for first responders, for military families. These are all things Donald Trump has proposed on the campaign trail. Really good politics. Don't doubt that. Difficult when you get in this building and you have to turn your rhetoric from out in the country to legislation. It gets real difficult.
It does. But Peter Baker, as you have written in the Times today, Donald Trump feels like he has all sorts of authority. At this moment in particular, he's acting much more like as you read, a king than anything else.
Yeah, return to the king. That was how Elon Musk put it. It's not a comparison that Trump's circle shies away from it. He enjoys it. He enjoys the idea of it. He enjoys the trappings of power and sort of a sort of regal royalty kind of look to his presidency, but also on policy, right? He's pushing the boundaries of executive power in so many ways, in which he's basically accruing power to himself. He's declaring a national emergency, not just on the border, which is something he did in his first term. Now he's declaring a national energy emergency, so he can take all sorts of policy he wants to do without necessarily having to consult with Congress. He has ignored the law that Congress passed on a bipartisan vote banning TikTok and single-handedly simply said, I'm not going to enforce that law. He's trying to rewrite the Constitution in terms of the 14th Amendment on birthright citizenship. A federal judge in Washington state today called that blatantly unconstitutional as he issued a ruling blocking him temporarily from that. So he is acting at this point in these first few days as somebody who is taking a great deal of authority to himself, and we'll see whether the checks and balances of the system assert themselves.